The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord, descending from heaven, came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. For fear of him, the guards shook and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he's been raised, as he said. Come, see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he's been raised from the dead, and indeed he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. This is my message for you." So they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them and said, "Greetings." And they came to him, took hold of his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
It's my habit to write my sermons not months ahead of time, as one preacher I knew did, nor even weeks ahead of time, as a few others I've known do. Some of my colleagues are adventurous indeed. They start their sermon the day before, or even sometimes the evening before they're supposed to preach. I've known some who've even finished mere minutes before they were due to step into the pulpit. But for me, long ago now, I settled into a routine that I've maintained for almost my entire career. Early in the week, I review the lessons for the following Sunday. Friday morning, I study them more deeply, and then by the afternoon, I begin writing. Sometimes I take Saturday morning too. And on rare occasions, I've even taken until Saturday afternoon to finish, but generally, I'm done by about 5 or so on Friday, or maybe noon on Saturday at the latest. And then Jessie, my wife, reads the sermon. Jessie isn't usually checking the theology or the spelling. She's reading it so that I don't start preaching to you like I'm giving a lecture, because I'm not a professor and you're not seminarians. We're all practicing Christians in an active community that follows Jesus in order to be part of what God is doing in the world. We're all just regular disciples in a regular church. This week, because we didn't have all the services we normally do during Holy Week, instead of the mad scramble of writing that normally happens between the Friday before Palm Sunday and all the way up sometimes to Easter morning, I found myself writing just as I might any other week, my Sunday sermon on Friday. No more pressure than normal, caused by the fact that there was a Wednesday service and then a Thursday service and then 2 services on Friday. Yes, I had to be done a little bit earlier than normal because of how we're filming these services, but I found myself, because of the pandemic, because Holy Week has been different than usual, thinking about Easter morning on Good Friday. If you're following along with the worship service using our electronic bulletin, you probably noticed the picture at the top of the bulletin. This is a very ancient, more than 14 centuries old depiction from a gospel book, what's called an illuminated manuscript. And it's really 2 pictures. Above there is a description of Jesus being crucified, or a depiction of Jesus being crucified, I should say. A soldier thrusting his spear into Jesus' side, a person offering him sour wine on the other side, which was likely vinegar called pasca, which was a favorite drink of Roman soldiers. Below there's another image of the empty tomb, an angel appearing to the women, the soldiers cowering, pretending to be asleep, the Lord himself greeting the women off to one side. I like the picture because it helps me to connect with the church of long ago. And in some way, this also seems to help me to connect with the church of every time and place. I know that Christians have been reading these stories and reflecting on them, and then retelling them, sharing our thoughts about them, and proclaiming the gospel since not very long after the stone was rolled away. And people just like us learned in that moment that he was no longer in that tomb, but had been raised. But it's fitting somehow that I think about Easter on Good Friday. I used to think that Good Friday should contain no hint of Easter Sunday, that it should be completely about the crucifixion and the tomb. And I don't think that's wrong, but perhaps that artist 1,400 years ago was onto something when they placed the two things right next to each other. It is certainly the case that Easter draws its deepest meaning from what happened on Good Friday. I'm one of that increasingly rare breed of old-fashioned Episcopal priests who thinks that sin is real and that it binds us, that death is our ultimate destination, and that if we are chained, enslaved by sin, that this is most emphatically a terrifying prospect. To die still in the grip of sin and of the enemy should cause all of us fear. And there is more than enough fear in the world right now, isn't there? The message of the cross, apart from the empty tomb, is encapsulated in the Good Friday story, summarized in that old picture. Some people working to kill Jesus in the picture, some people working to make his last moments less agonizing, some others sitting nearby gambling to see who would get his garments, two other unfortunates also dying on their own crosses, one bitterly, one reaching out in his last moments in clarity and even the first glimmerings of hope. None of the 12 there. Judas, dead by his own hand, the others have run away. Very much like the life we have now, most of us, if we don't know the reality of the empty tomb and the risen Christ. Those without hope aren't all on the cross, of course. Some of them help to crucify others. Some help the crucified from compassion. Some take advantage of the unfortunate. Some just watch. Some watch and despair for the love they have for those they are losing and can't save. It might be others on the cross today, but whether by the cross or 1,000 other means, natural and unnatural, we all face the tomb and the prospect of being laid in it as the last thing our immortal bodies do. Like I said, I'm one of those old-fashioned preachers, one who thinks that resurrection isn't just a metaphor, not the resurrection of Jesus, not the bodily resurrection of the faithful on the last day. I think that Good Friday's story is true and necessary. Not just that Jesus died and was laid lifeless into the grave, but all the other elements too. That people like us, then and now, kill our neighbors. And sometimes we do it under the color of war, or the justice system, or through negligence, or through lack of compassion, or through enforced poverty. That people like us, then and now, stand and by and watch death unfold for others, affected, but believing we're powerless to do anything about it. That people like us, then and now, profit from the suffering of others. Or that we feel compassionate toward them and give them something to drink maybe, but it doesn't occur to us to cut the person down, to pull the nails out of the hands and feet. Or maybe it does, but we're too scared to do it. Scared that perhaps we'll end up on a cross too. Or just resigned to the idea that one way or another, we're all going to die anyway. I believe that Jesus Christ really died and that on Easter, he really lived again. He had a pulse, had substance, an actual living, breathing body, still marked by the wounds of Good Friday. I believe that he appeared to his followers, first to the women, and then to the other disciples, and then to many others, just as it says in the New Testament. The message of the empty tomb, of the risen Christ, stands right beside the message of the crucifixion. Easter means something precisely and only because we don't pretend Good Friday never happened. We don't pretend that the world isn't consumed by Good Friday all the time, by poverty, by wealthy, powerful people who care only that we vote for them, or buy their products, or obey their orders, by injustice for many and special privileges for a very few. The picture I sent to you doesn't show every person who had something to do with Good Friday. It doesn't show the authorities, religious and political, who orchestrated the death of Jesus. It shows only the ones who carried out the orders. It doesn't show the disciples in either image because they, like us, only come into the picture either before Good Friday, when we desert those in need, or after the tomb has been opened, when we can see Jesus and know that he's alive again. It's no shame on them or on us for believing that this Good Friday world we live in is more powerful than anything we might do to oppose it. Unless, of course, you believe that Jesus rose again, that he still lived after having died, and that he still lives and reigns over all of us. Unless, of course, you're an old-fashioned Christian like me who believes that the risen Christ has the power himself and has delegated it to the church to work against all that keeps humankind in bondage to sin and death. We all inhabit the same world, but some people understand that Jesus Christ has changed reality, and some think that the gospel is fake news, that mercy, truth, justice, forgiveness, and moral courage are for the weak and the crucified. And maybe that's true. Maybe those things are for the weak and the crucified, but it is through those very same people that the risen Lord is working to accomplish his purpose. And that purpose is to extend to every person with the will to believe in him the victory that he won when the stone was rolled away and the angel proclaimed to the women who loved Jesus, "Do not be afraid. I know that you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised." It probably still feels a bit like Good Friday to all of us, even now, because we can't go out and live as we're accustomed to living. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe when we leave our homes at last, we'll take the opportunity to place Good Friday in its proper relationship to Easter. Maybe we'll pull out some nails, speak truth to crucifiers, give heart and courage to ourselves and others who have lived under the shadow of the cross, and set our hearts upon meeting the risen Christ.